everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Penscast Mailbag here at the Skating Penguin Network, a Labor Day edition for all of our United States friends. I am Garrett Bahana, as always, joined by Robbie Noggle, fellow contributing writer over at Pittsburgh.com, as well as our newest recruit to the Skating Penguin Network, Snail. We have a pretty big mailbag this week, 18 questions in all from quite a few different people this week, so love to see the variety in the mailbag. If you would like to contribute to a future edition of one of these mailbag episodes, you can do so by following us on Twitter or X, whatever it's called. Follow us at PenguinsFFSN to stay up to date with new content that comes out, mailbag tweets that we put out every week. We send out a mailbag tweet roughly every Sunday asking for your participation in these mailbag episodes. So we have 18 questions this week, and we will start question number 1 with Robbie. Question number 2 goes to Snail. I will take question number 3, and we will, like we have done in the past, repeat that cycle until all questions are answered. Question number 1, Robbie, comes from Brian. It's unfortunate, Robbie, that Carl Hagelin has to retire the way he did, but he was a crucial part in that back-to-back run. His speed and forecheck gave teams fits. One of the rare bad moves, Brian believes, by former general manager Jim Rutherford by trading him away. Brian would also like to add that it's something poetic that he and Patric Hornqvist are retiring in the same offseason.
Yeah, certainly. I know that Hagelin had some injury issues, especially with his eye in the past couple years. And it is unfortunate that he has to go out like that. He can't really go out on his own terms. But what a career he had. Again, one of the fastest skaters, maybe the fastest skater of his time. It just absolutely, he could fly all over the ice. He was such a weapon for those Penguins teams that won back-to-back Stanley Cups. A great trade to bring him in. From Anaheim in kind of the middle of that 2016 season, as they were kind of on the upswing after struggling the first half of that season. And yeah, he was obviously the H in the HBK that was so vitally important to that 2016 run. And then in 2017, running it back, he had the goal that put the rubber seal on the 2017 championship in Nashville. And he was more than just an on-ice guy. He was clearly a locker room guy as well, extremely well-liked. His trade in 2019 for Tanner Pearson was kind of one of Jim Rutherford's patented shake up the roster when things aren't going great kind of things, and it didn't work out, obviously. Definitely a regrettable move, but he probably would have been leaving Pittsburgh at the end of that season anyway, just because of cap numbers. He was up for a new contract, I believe. But yeah, a very great career. Glad that he gets to go enjoy life now, and I hope that he can, whatever his eye issues aren't something that bother him throughout the rest of his life, and it gets sorted out, and he can live a great retirement with his wife and kids. Whenever he comes back to Pittsburgh, should always receive a standing ovation. And as for retiring the same time as Hornqvist, it's kind of sad now that some of these guys are getting that were so crucial to that back-to-back run are now on their way out. You have guys like Bonino, who's obviously at the end of his career. Fleury, who looks like he's playing his last season. Now Hagelin and Hornqvist are both retired. Phil Kessel, the K in the HBK, does not currently have a job right now, but he is obviously toward the end of his career. So best of luck to Carl Hagelin, whatever his future plans are, and he'll forever be a legend in Pittsburgh. Question number 2, sticking with Brian here. With Fenway Sports Group now having purchased what is formerly AT&T SportsNet, do you think that blackouts will be eliminated? From their statement, it seems like nothing on the broadcast side will be too different. Franchises should want to make it as easy as possible for fans to watch their team play, and can Snail not watch the Penguin games through ESPN Plus since he's not a local in Pittsburgh?
So, yeah, like I used to have the before I moved like a year ago. I had just your average cable, and I would pay for NHL Center Ice. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, if that's just a thing out here or everywhere, but I would be able to watch every Penguins game. But since I moved, I don't have cable anymore, and I now I now have like every streaming app there is in order to watch every Penguins game, and I still run into blackouts, which sucks. I think they need to figure that out. I'm curious, do you guys out there, do you experience regional blackouts, or is Pittsburgh just some sort of like, do they really care about their fans and their sports enough to have eliminated those?
I've definitely experienced, like there are certain blackouts I know I've experienced depending on what platform like the Penguins games are on. I'm trying to think. I've experienced, like, I'm streaming them online. Yeah, I know I've definitely experienced those blackouts. But I mean, for the most part, with this AT&T SportsNet Pittsburgh stuff, hopefully blackouts just do get eliminated. Hopefully they go with FSG now in control of this. Hopefully they go the streaming route and offer like a streaming package, whether it's like $7.99, $9.99 a month to watch all 82 games in postseason or whatever, something like that. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely, blackouts suck for fan purposes, but hopefully now with the direction we're moving in with a heavy emphasis on streaming products and streaming services, yeah, I'd be in favor of doing something like that.
So, so yeah, out here in Seattle, even like once we Seattle got the Kraken out here, I mean, on ESPN, like if the only way you have to watch hockey is on ESPN Plus, like you can't watch Kraken home games. It's really ridiculous. So I've heard like this thing brought up a couple of times with the like a direct to consumer like streaming service for, like, for example, for the Penguins. Would that just mean you download an app? Is it as simple as that? You download an app like you would ESPN Plus or like TNT or something, and just you pay a subscription for it, and then every month, like you just like $7.9, whatever that dollar figure looks like, and you have access to every single game played that season? Is that essentially what that model would look like?
That should be how the model works in the future if they go down that route. Yeah, you download an app and pay whatever it is a month, and that should be what it looks like. Whether or not they do that remains to be seen.
I'd be totally down for that. I don't see why they haven't moved. I mean, I get it's complicated. There's like TV deals, and I'm sure it's extremely complicated and not as simple as just like pulling the trigger on creating an app like that. But I hope that they move in that direction. That would just make things so easy. But I'm sure ESPN and TNT and these big networks would beg to differ. That I'm sure that like I said, it's probably complicated. But yeah, out here I try to watch all the Penguins games. I'll download something last minute just to watch one if it's not on one of those big streaming services. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but that's just kind of the way it's always been, especially when you don't have cable or something like Center Ice. Let's see here. Question 3 so this is from Brian. Brian asks, who do you want to see in the booth for the broadcast now that Mears and Airy were let go? Glad to hear that Potash is staying on. He makes pre, post, and mid-game interviews so fun. His connection with the team is special. I'd like to see Armdog get his chance full time. And Woody also asks kind of a similar question here. Woody asks also, are you surprised that Mears and Airy were replaced? I'm more surprised over Mears. Airy became too much of a cheerleader for the other teams for my liking. Hopefully old 2-9er or Colby Armstrong is on the play-by-play.
Well, sticking with the broadcast questions we have, we'll talk about the news that was made earlier. Not earlier this week, but late last week. It was announced that with Fenway Sports Group purchasing the rights to the regional sports network that was AT&T SportsNet, Fenway Sports Group has created their own regional sports network called SportsNet Pittsburgh. And with that acquisition and with that change comes the unfortunate replacement of both Bob Airy and Steve Mears. Airy had been with the team broadcasting games for over 20 years at this point, if I'm not mistaken. Steve Mears was brought in to replace Paul Staggerwald in 2016 or 2017. So Airy and Mears had been together for 6 or 7 years. And it's good to see Potash, like Brian mentions, good to see Dan Potash. He is an incredibly popular figure in that locker room with the players, and obviously has a tremendous fan following outside. If you're local to Pittsburgh and catching interviews with Potash in the intermission, I am surprised. I am quite surprised that FSG made this move. But I think both Airy and Mears are talented in their own rights, that they will both land on their feet doing something else. I know Steve Mears has prior experience with the NHL Network, and he's called other hockey games for other hockey teams before. I think he will have no problem finding a job. I think he is an incredibly talented play-by-play man. Bob Airy, I don't know what the future could hold for Bob Airy. Maybe he starts a former player podcast like a lot of guys do. I think it would be interesting to hear that side of Bob Airy. But switching to Woody's question, talking about this as well, what could happen to the future? We really don't know outside of Dan Potash staying with the new RSN that Fenway has created. It had been a common running theme, if listening to this commentary that Woody notes here, Airy became too much of a cheerleader for other teams for his liking, and I had heard that sentiment a lot before. I get there's a sense of homerism. You have to have, when Paul Staggerwald and Bob Airy were together as a tandem, there were a lot of claims of homerism between that duo. And for regional sports networks, for local markets, I think that's okay to have that sense of homerism. You're covering this particular team. You're not doing it at a national level. You're singularly focused on one market. I don't think that's too much of a problem. Airy's commentary I could live without, especially later on, where like 50% of his commentary was basically, oh, let's get mucking and grinded. If the Penguins were out, like if they were down 4-2, he would go, oh, let's get mucking and grinding. Let's start throwing hits. That'll get the Penguins back in the game. But I for the nostalgia aspect and the familiarity aspect of being on the air for so long, I think that's what I'll miss the most about Bob Airy's commentary. As for the future, I have not heard anything. I don't have inside sources. I would not be surprised if FSG does a simulcast of Josh Getzoff and maybe Phil Bourque or Colby Armstrong as the color guy. I know Josh Yohe put out a piece in The Athletic a couple of days ago saying that team sources were high on Josh Getzoff's work as the radio play-by-play man for the Penguins radio network. I think he would be a tremendous addition to the TV side. I'd be curious if they go the simulcast route to cut costs, because I know regional sports networks had been losing a lot of money, and with more and more people cutting cable, they had been making cutbacks, not sending announcers on the road, keeping them in a home studio and not recording commentary, but watching the game from a studio and giving live commentary that way. So I could see a simulcast route to cut costs if FSG goes that route, but it looks like Josh Getzoff will be the TV play-by-play person. I'm not sure if Phil Bourque will come over to the TV side of things, or if Colby Armstrong maybe gets an increase in responsibility, but I'm sure those questions will be answered within the next month or so before the regular season gets under full swing.
Is there like a announcer, like would you give Doc Emmerich just like a blank check to call Penguins games?
I would personally, but he is happily enjoying retirement, and
yeah, true.
I mean, I don't know what he was making at the NBC level, but I'm sure it's whatever he was making. I mean, FSG has money, but I don't know if they have enough money to lure Doc Emrick out of retirement. But for my own personal perspective, if I could get Doc Emrick to broadcast 82 Penguin games a year, I would be in heaven. But I think Doc is happily enjoying retirement, so I'll let him be.
Or what about Paul Steigerwald? How do you guys feel about him? Like, I doubt he would come back. I don't think that's not even been talked about for a reason. But I loved hearing his calls.
No, they should not do that.
Yeah, a lot of people agree with Robbie. I'm indifferent. I could live with or without Paul Steigerwald, but if you survey Penguins fans in the Pittsburgh region, especially ones that are Robbie's age and younger, I think that they would be opposed to bringing back Paul Steigerwald.
Could you just like quickly like enlighten me as to like why? Because I didn't know that there was that bias.
Is it the blatant homerism?
Yeah, he's just blatant like, and he was just like he'd be so out of pocket at times, and he's quite clearly better off in a role where he's working for the team in a behind the scenes capacity. Again, the Steigerwalds have been tied into the Penguins for well before I was even born at this point, so it's kind of it just gets tiring to a point, and I'd much rather have a very young, very well-liked option in Josh Getzoff right there for the taking. He's done almost the impossible and replaced Mike Lang on the radio. It's a massive shoes to fill. I think he's just very, very, very good at his job. He is very energetic, very even, very fair. I just think that the obvious answer is right there in front of you, and you take it when it's there. And I think that it's just the easiest choice. And whoever's the color guy, I don't have any issue with either Phil Bourque or Colby Armstrong. Even if they rotate those two guys between the radio and the television, does not matter to me one iota.
I really like Phil Bourque. I think he's a straight shooter, even if the Penguins are playing poorly. So having Phil Bourque come along on TV would be super entertaining because he tells it like it is and is not afraid to share his emotion and his criticism when the Penguins are playing badly or not up to his expectations. So I would be in favor of that. But again, we'll wait and see what FSG has up their sleeve as the preseason inches closer. Question number 4. I think this is our weekly food question from Brian. Robbie, you can take this one. What's one food take that you had that has since been changed? For Brian, it was thinking sushi was gross before he even ever tried it.
So I'll answer this and open it up to you guys as well, because I'm sure we all have an opinion on this. And I think that Brian's example of sushi is probably shared by a lot of people throughout the country. But mine, man, sushi is definitely probably on my radar. But one that I'm going to go with is I've never been a fan of coconut flavoring. Because I grew up with coconut basically being that shaved stuff they put on cakes that was horrendously sugared up and just not good. But now that I've had like legit coconut, like fresh coconut milk, coconut, I guess it's coconut fat or whatever that you can use as a butter substitute. Fresh coconut is actually very good. It's not my favorite, but it's not that horrific, flaky stuff that sticks to your teeth and is just so oversugared that it's almost too much sugar to handle. So that's mine. I'll go with coconut, and then I will pass it along to the rest of you to see what you say.
Snail, do you have something off the top of your head? I'm trying to think what my reversible food take would be.
I don't know, because I feel like throughout my life I've gone through that so many times. Prior to being vegan, of course, like, dude, there was only one food that I did not like, and that was Swiss chard. Do you guys know what Swiss chard is?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know if I've ever had it though.
I've never had it. I don't know what it is.
It's a leafy green. It's like a big kind of like it's a big bulky, almost like dinosaur kale. That's like the one food that I can think of that, and I've had it since then, and I can't. It's like a spicy lettuce. It sucks. Maybe like tofu. Like I think before I was vegan, it was like, why would I ever eat that like flavorless like sponge? And then now, since going vegan and using it as a protein source quite frequently, you got to learn how to cook with it or whatever. And now I eat tofu multiple times a week. So I guess that's probably the easiest one off the top of my head.
I don't know. When I was a kid, I wanted nothing to do with mustard, and it's not that's not really a food. I know it's a condiment. I'm really trying to rack my brain and trying to think. Like, I wouldn't consider myself a picky eater, but I've eaten like the same set of things on rotation for like my entire life. So I don't know that this is a tough question. I think for the sake of an answer, I will say I like mustard. I like mustard now when I didn't like mustard, and we'll move on to question 5. So. Robbie,
actually, I got one really quick.
Okay.
Sorry. But dude, you know what I used to never like was, do you guys have Auntie Anne's pretzels out there?
Yep.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So like my younger sister, when we'd go to the mall or something for like back to school shopping or whatever, I feel like Auntie Anne's I tried one of their pretzels before and I could not stand Auntie Anne's. I thought it was like gross, like kind of stale pretzels or whatever. Anyways, I had one not that long ago. And it was so good. I seek out pretzels. I'm like a pretzel guy now. And I'm willing to try any and all of their. I didn't even know they had more than just the brown sugar and cinnamon pretzels. You can get ones with like jalapenos baked into them. You can get the classic with the salt on it. They have a bunch of options. So actually one a food that I have changed my mind on drastically is Auntie Anne's pretzels. Are you guys into those? Are you guys pretzel guys?
I like pretzels, but I'm not like hardcore. I like soft pretzels with like a cheese or a beer cheese or like a nacho cheese or a mustard. That I can devour soft pretzels.
Yeah, same. Soft pretzels. I mean, I can eat like the bag pretzels, the hard ones, especially if they're like sourdough pretzels. I'm not a fan of just like, I mean, I'll eat them. Just the normal, like standard pretzel twist with salt on. I definitely like a little flavor to them, but soft pretzels, I can eat. Auntie Anne's is obviously delicious, but I can eat about any soft pretzel. That would be one that I'd have no trouble chowing down on anytime I got the chance.
All right, Robbie, take us into question number 5.
Question number 5 from Brian again. If we call Nickelback divorced dad rock, then you definitely have to put Creed in that category as well. Do you agree?
I do agree. I think, I mean, if there are fans of these bands out there, I'm sorry, also not sorry. It's like if Nickelback is Creed, is Hinder, is Stained, is 3 Days Grace, it's all those bands are lumped into that. I think it's hilarious that they're calling it divorced dad rock. One, because it's just like so like brutally honest, and then like also like that's just an awesome there's like Spotify playlists that are like divorced dad rock, and I mean I've seen some bands that I think don't fit into that category. Like obviously there's some kids out there that had a dad going through divorce and they were in the basement crushing beers listening to like whatever bands. Like I saw like Green Day on there, and I saw like in some of these lists I saw a Nirvana. I'm like, Kurt's rolling in his grave right now. But yeah, those bands are all, I mean, yeah, Creed is definitely that kind of that weird, like very early 2000s, like odd mesh of like grunge, obviously some grunge influence mixed with like maybe more of like a metal or a new metal sound, and maybe just like a few droplets of some emo in there. I don't know. Do you guys agree?
Do you want me to sing what the hell is it? Arms Wide Open? Is that the name of the song?
Yeah, that's like the go-to Creed song.
That's the only Creed song I know, and it's been
Creed,
memed. been memed to death. Like
yeah, Creed is definitely in that genre of divorced dad rock. I'd say they're like the most divorced dad rock band.
Yes,
Big time, dude. They're worse. Like not worse, but like, dude, Creed is almost like more of like a. I would say Creed is like beneath Nickelback, right? If we're like judging them like that.
Yeah,
I think I would agree with that. And
they were like Nickelback before Nickelback.
Well, it's like Nickelback's like a meme, like kind of at least. Creed isn't even like a meme. Creed's kind of like, oh shit, like you listen to Creed.
Yeah. With Arms Wide Open is like the major one that everybody knows. And I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen the video of them performing the Thanksgiving halftime show in Dallas, I believe, in like the late 90s. And it's just very cringe. It's just not great.
It's so good, it's bad.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so bad, it's good. Yeah. Again, it's like a meme. Like the Nickelback's been memed. Or not Nickelback, Creed's been memed as well, but they're definitely like super divorced dad rock. I absolutely agree with that.
Like maybe even like messy divorce dad rock.
Yeah. I think Nickelback's like what you listen to when you're just going through it. Creed is definitely like when the custody fight turns ugly.
Oh my god!
For real, like Nickelback might be thrown on. Like you might just be like catching a buzz solo one night when like your old lady's out of town or something. Like it's not always in like a dark atmosphere.
Think, like, if you're at like a party and Nickelback comes on, everybody sings it unironically. But if Creed comes on at a party, somebody's throwing the stereo out the window.
Oh man, for Robbie has gone on record in recent podcasts and said he's really not much of an audiophile, but for Robbie to come out here and sling some of this heat for Creed, I mean, it's fascinating to see this unravel.
He's had a grudge, it seems like, against Creed. He's been waiting for this day.
I have no grudge against Creed. I just don't think they're very good.
Yeah, tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, but yeah, that's how I feel.
All right, well, I guess we'll move on from the divorced dad rock. I've been enjoying that, kind of touching on that recently. So, anyways, we'll move to question 6 now from Brian here. Brian asks, do you have a hockey term that you love more than others? I got to go with flow, since I have a good flow going. Oh, man.
Well, since Brian brings that up, we like the next logical step in this evolution. Now, we have to see if Brian is okay with doing this, obviously, but we have to see this flow. We have to see if he is willing to send us a question over the interwebs and comment and say he has a good flow going. Well, we can't just go by what he says. We have to see some photographic evidence of this flow.
Yeah, we'll be the judge if it's a good flow.
Exactly. As far as other hockey terminology, I think the use of hockey speak or hockey terminology in regular conversation is kind of cringe. I don't do it like I don't say the word barn for an arena. I don't say butte for a fancy goal that was scored. I don't use selly. I don't like if I'm having an argument with somebody. I don't say I'm chirping them or trash talking them. What else? What else is there? Mitts. He has silky mitts. I don't say that. Salad is another term for hair. I don't say salad. Top cheese, top cheddar, just below a goal that's just below the crossbar. I don't use that as well. I think all of this hockey stuff, hockey talk, is super cringe, and I will refuse to use it in conversation. Question 7 from Brian. Do you guys think if we win the cup within the next three seasons, Crosby gives Carlson his Ray Bourque moment and hands Carlson Lord Stanley directly?
So I don't think it'll be a Ray Bourque type moment like we saw in Colorado back in 2001. But I definitely think, just glancing at the roster, I think that he would be the easy choice to be the first guy the cup is handed off to should the Penguins win a Stanley Cup with him on the roster, because there's nobody else that would really fit that role if we're going just off this year's roster, it definitely seems like, yeah, he would be the only real deserving candidate, unless they bring in like a super veteran that like a Ron Hainsey type almost, that has never even been to the playoffs and wins a cup with the team. But I think, based on what the roster is right now, he would be the obvious choice for the person that takes the cup first, unless he wants to do a direct handoff to like Malkin or something. But I think overall the first choice would obviously be Erik Karlsson. Maybe not in a Ray Borg type stance. I think Crosby would be more than happy to take the cup around for a lap like he has done in the past. But the always often discuss who gets the cup first from the captain. I think the obvious choice for this current Penguins team would be Erik Karlsson. So maybe not a true Ray Bork moment, but he would definitely be the top choice to get the cup first. Question number 8 from Brian. Who's the best player to never win the Hart Trophy?
So there's actually a few guys here that when I was kind of reading into this a little bit, I was shocked. I guess I'll give you guys a few that I think you might be surprised to hear that it never won the Hart, and then I'll give you my pick. And a couple names is like Mike Bossy, Marcel Dion. Marcel Dion has career 731 goals and over 1,000 assists. Never won the Hart. For how dominant he was in his era, you got like a goalie in Martin Brodeur. My pick, though, is got to be Steve Yzerman. I mean, seeing that he never won a Hart was truly shocking to me. I think he's like the longest ever standing captain to captain the same team or whatever from 86 to 2005. A few Stanley Cups in there. I think between 1987 and 1993, he had over 100 points each of those seasons. So just a dominant player and just a man amongst boys at times and a pure leader. That's my pick. Also Iginla, Jerome Iginla. I'm a huge Iginla fan, and he had many years of dominance, and kind of shocked that he never got one. He scored a lot of goals there for quite a while. So I'd be curious if you guys have any off the top of your head.
Nick Lidstrom and Marty Brodeur. I mean, Brodeur, I don't know how many Vezinas Brodeur won, but for Brodeur to never win a Hart seems kind of strange. It never happened. But, Lidstrom being widely regarded as one of the greatest defensemen of all time and never got that Hart Trophy. I mean, there's a bunch of guys. You mentioned Iginla. Iginla was, I thought, going to be the first name that come out of your mouth, Snail. But those were the two that came to my mind, Lidstrom and Brodeur. Robbie, I don't know about you.
Yeah, one that sticks out to me, and this is more of a recent one, is Steven Stamkos. His teammate Nikita Kucherov won, but again, he kind of came in it's kind of tough sometimes. I mean, a large portion of since the 80s has been Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, guys like that. Yzerman's a good choice as well. Brodeur, I mean, especially when you look at Brodeur, like some of the other goalies that have won Hart trophies, Hasek has 2, Jose Theodore has 1, Carey Price has 1. So like those kind of guys, but I'm gonna go with Steven Stamkos. I mean, he's over 500 goals. He's maybe gonna get to 600. He's a Hall of Famer. So I'm gonna go with Steven Stamkos for this. But when you really dive in deep to it, there's a lot of very good options here, and the Yzerman one is also very good as well.
All right. Question. Actually, this is not a question. Brian has a statement here, and he says simply, "You guys got me. I am Kyle Dubas."
I thought Brian was. We had hypothesized. I can't remember if it was last week's mailbag or if it was during our midweek segment, A Mile in Kyle's Shoes. I brought up in jest, I think basically in passing, that Brian is basically Kyle Dubas operating a burner Twitter account. But it's good to know now that we have confirmation that Kyle Dubas has been masquerading as a man named Brian for the better part of, well, I don't even know how long he's been active on social media. But basically, Kyle Dubas has been giving us content for a very long time. And so, Kyle, Brian, whatever your name is, I have to thank you. Thank you for allowing Robbie, myself, and Snail to create these mailbags and give some more Penguins content to the deprived, the starved Penguins fandom that just wants to watch Sidney Crosby score some amazing goals again. So, Brian, Kyle, whatever your name is, of course it's Brian, obviously. We now know that you are, in fact, Kyle Dubas. So I thank you for that.
Thanks, Brian. Kyle.
All right. Robbie, question number 10 comes from, again, Brian/Kyle. Is there any specific player or players that you'd like to see get a PTO contract?
I mean, I think the obvious answer here is Tomas Tatar, is it not? We've been kind of that seems to have kind of the talk around that seems to have kind of cooled down in the past couple of weeks ever since his comments about talking to the Pens but not saying much more than that. Yeah, I mean, Tatar is one. Again, the Penguins are kind of up against it here now. PTOs don't really, I mean, they don't really mean anything in terms of salary cap. It only really matters if you take them from a PTO to a contract. So maybe Kessel. Maybe we give Phil Kessel a look on a PTO if that's something he'd be interested in. But I don't know. Tatar is the one that we're all kind of waiting on to hear anything, if it's a PTO or a just an NHL contract. Again, we're running out of time now. I believe camp starts next week. Not this week now, not Labor Day week, but I believe the next week, the middle of September there it starts. And still some time there, but I'm going to sit on Tomas Tatar and, hey, maybe even Phil Kessel if both sides are interested in giving it another shot to run it back.
Garrett, do you want Kessel back in Pitt?
I would like it for nostalgic purposes, fan purposes. I was just having a conversation earlier today with my friend Pat Damp over at the Locked On Network, Locked On Penguins co-host with Hunter Hodes. I was just talking with him about this very topic, whether or not Phil Kessel should be on the Penguins roster for a reunion. I think it would be fun because this fan base loves Phil Kessel, but the analytical, objective part of my brain says it probably doesn't happen.
All right, question number, I believe this is 11. This is now we're switching over to Kim from Denmark. What do you think about the rules on penalties they are trying out in the Champions Hockey League?
So I figured we could kind of maybe give our. I have a few of the. I think these are the rules. I have 3 of them here that they're trying out over there in the Champions Hockey League, and I thought maybe we could discuss them and see if there's something maybe we'd like implemented in the NHL or not. I'll read them off quick here to you. The first one being, a team that causes a minor penalty will remain shorthanded even if the opposing team scores a goal. And then the next one is, a minor penalty will be served even if a goal is scored while a delayed penalty is pending. And then the third one here that I saw is, if the shorthanded team scores, the minor penalty against will end. And I think we had a question maybe a week or two ago. I think a couple of these, maybe it was like a hypothetical about like rules we'd like changed in the NHL. And a couple of these sound pretty familiar that maybe we discussed these. So anyways, I kind of like, my personal take is I kind of like these. I really like, if the shorthanded team scores, the minor penalty against will end. We talked about it on the mailbag where with the hypothetical rule change. I think this would be awesome in the NHL. I think it's an awesome concept because if you're shorthanded, you're actually giving your stars more ice time because there's incentive to score a goal. I think it would change the way, I mean, you're changing essentially a penalty kill is all defense, but when you could put your stars out there shorthanded and it becomes more of a it becomes more about offense. I think that, we want to watch goals be scored. That would be inherently interesting to see, a penalty, and then Sid's out there with like Malkin, you load up a 4-man little squad out there to try to end the penalty early. I think that'd be awesome. Curious, what about you guys?
I've long advocated for a penalty ends if you score shorthanded. I'm glad it's being tested out somewhere, and it could be a terrible idea. So I'm interested to see how all this plays out in kind of a test trial period at the Champions Hockey League. I'm not a fan of the score as many times as you want on a 2-minute minor penalty. Just not really not worth, in my opinion, treating it as a 5-minute major. And then the delayed penalty one, I'm kind of in the middle on. I think that I think it's a good idea, but I want to see it in practice before I wage a full opinion on that. But as for the killing or the penalty ends if you score shorthanded, I am 100% on board with that.
I'm looking at these rules. I love the innovation for a potential boost in offense. Now, whether or not these rules get moved over to the NHL is a completely different conversation for a completely different day. But a team that caused a minor penalty will remain shorthanded, even if the opposing team scores a goal. That's talk about scoring more offense, boosting offensive numbers. A minor penalty will be served even if a goal is scored while a delayed penalty. Again, making another team shorthanded. It would suck for the shorthanded team, but it would be another way to increase offense. These are all of my reasonings have to do with basically increasing goal scoring, because I think that's what fans pay to see these days. So if you can give them more avenues to try and see their favorite team score goals and win games, I think it would be beneficial for all parties involved. But right now, these rules are starting over in Europe. We'll see if they ever get introduced to the NHL level. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to any of these 3 rules becoming mainstays in the NHL rulebook.
All right. Question 12 coming from Cam again. If we have the squad we have now, how far will we go?
How far will we go? We will go as far as Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin lead this team, and Chris Letang for that matter. You could make the argument that the Penguins will go as far as Tristan Jarry will take them. This will be the season Tristan Jarry finally gets his big money contract. He's locked up long term. Can Jarry stay healthy? That is one of the $1 million questions. What kind of production can Erik Karlsson give his brand new team? Can Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang remain elite as they get closer and closer to age 40? Both Malkin and Crosby had tremendous seasons last year. I believe they both played 82 games last year, which is incredible that neither player missed significant time with injury. But for as long as it's been, Crosby leads the charge, and it will remain that way. I think this team is a playoff team, and I think this team can get out of the first round. I genuinely believe that. Can they win the Stanley Cup? Are their days of routinely competing for Stanley Cups, are they still alive? I don't think so. I think there are better teams in the Eastern Conference than the Penguins, and that's okay. That is okay. Yeah, we want to see the Penguins win the Stanley Cup every year, but every person on this team, every superstar has had their legacy cemented by winning the back-to-back cups in 2016 and 2017. So if this core doesn't win another championship over the next 3 to 4 years, I am going to sleep just fine at night. For the next 3 to 4 years, I just want to be entertained. Give me an entertaining product on the ice that I can routinely tune in for and cheer for, even if it doesn't mean we lift Lord Stanley at the end of the season. Question number 13 from Tony Nikkanen goes to Robbie. Provide us with an analysis of this team's potential line by the player's speed. You may use the scale to describe speed on this team, from Carl Hagelin to super fast to fast, above average, average, a step slow, or slow. And Tony gives an example here. For instance, I would rank Rust as a fast player according to this scale. So, Robbie, who are the speed burners on this team?
Well, your speed burners, I mean, Letang, still a super fast skater. Crosby, probably not as fast as he once was, but can still get up and down the ice. So I'm going to say Crosby and Letang both as fast skaters. I really don't know if there is what I would call just looking at the roster, a super fast skater on this roster right now.
P.O. Joseph is super fast.
Joseph can skate, yeah. It's just, again, not a ton of speed on this team. I mean, your younger guys are all pretty fast skaters. Your O'Connors, your Nylanders. Gensel has never been the fastest skater in the world. The lowest on here is slow. So whatever is below slow is where we put Jeff Carter. He actually has his own category. He is Jeff Carter. Yeah, there's obviously Hagelin. I think if you're using Hagelin as a super fast example, then that category is going to be extremely limited. Maybe like McDavid is in that category. Cole Caulfield's a super fast skater up in Montreal. But that, if Hagelin is your baseline for super fast, and there's not going to be many people in that echelon. But I mean, if you're going fast, I mean, Crosby's still a fast skater. Letang is probably the closest the Penguins have to a super fast skater outside of Pierre-Olivier Joseph. Carlson, I'd say, he's lost maybe a step, but his skill makes him maybe appear more fast than he actually is. Goalies we're going to take out of it. Ty Smith, from what we saw, I believe is a fast skater, but a guy like Pettersson is going to be probably an average skater, maybe above average. Malkin, I'm going to say, is still above average, even though he's lost a step because, I mean, the knee injuries eventually are going to catch up. Raquel, I'm going to say, is above average. Gensel, above average. Yeah, not a ton of super speed, but again, you don't need a team of Hagelins to compete, obviously. But yeah, I mean, yeah, no super fast skater, but plenty of speed up and down this roster as well. This question is specifically for Snail, and it is from Kim from Denmark again. Coming from Seattle, Snail, do you like the show Frasier? I've seen every episode, and I think it is fantastic.
So I must admit,
oh no!
Last night when I was perusing Twitter, I saw this question. I had no idea Frasier took place in Seattle because I have never watched it.
Okay, I mean the intro is literally like the Seattle skyline with the needle and all that. I cannot believe that I'm hearing this right now.
So
and you're older than I am. You are older. You are what, 6-7 years older than me, and you have never seen Frasier.
No, I haven't. So last night, actually, I got into bed and I watched Frasier. I was like, you know what? I got to see what's up with this. And it's a great show. It's like classic 90s. I mean, it's like Friends or like Seinfeld or whatever, which I watched. Like Everybody Loves Raymond. Like I watched those shows, but dude, Frasier, for some reason, maybe it was like regional. I don't know. Maybe Frasier was played less in Seattle, because when I saw this question, I was like, I have heard that name before. I have never seen it. Like, I don't think I've ever like in all my years of watching TV, I can't recall a single time where they were like, coming up next is Frasier or something, like I don't recall that. So I that's awesome. You've seen every episode. I watched like 6 episodes in bed last night before falling asleep. Very comfy comfy show to watch and just kind of listen to. It's the humor is subtle, and it's that classic like 90s kind of dry humor. So have you guys watched Frasier, I guess?
Yeah, I've seen
Frasier. I love Frasier. I mean,
yeah, I've watched. I can't say I've seen every single episode,
same.
but yeah, and it's more or less. It wasn't even something growing up like I knew it existed, but mostly more in. I think the '90s sitcoms actually make more sense now than watching them growing up because the humor is more adultish. So it makes more sense now, but. Yeah, Frasier I've watched again, and not to stick on the Frasier line, but saying you're from Seattle, not having seen Frasier is like someone from Boston saying they've never seen Cheers.
I bet Snail's never seen Cheers either.
I have seen Cheers.
Frasier.
Really?
You know Frasier's in Cheers, right?
No.
Literally, that's Frasier is a spinoff of Cheers.
No way.
Yeah, he's literally in. Like he is one of the bar patrons, maybe not the whole show, but for a significant part, he Frasier in Cheers.
Character.
Oh my god, so wait, in the first episode of Frasier, he says he moved away from Seattle for a while and then he moved back. Is that what he's referring to?
Very much so.
Oh my god, my mind is blown. That is amazing. The lore of Frasier has me just captivated right now.
This is the funniest thing I think I've ever been a part of. Yeah, he is.
In real time, have just witnessed Snail's mind get blown for realizing that, well, he's never seen Frasier. He didn't realize it was a spinoff of Cheers. He has seen Cheers, but he doesn't remember seeing Frasier in Cheers.
So, have you watched? Yeah, he didn't start coming into Cheers until he was he wasn't a main character until season 5. But in the first 6 episodes of Frasier that you watched, has he mentioned his ex-wife Lilith at all?
Yeah, he has.
Okay, so she is. You will eventually see her in Frasier, but she is also a character on Cheers.
Jesus, boys! Oh my god!
At some point throughout the entire series of Frasier, all the Cheers main actors make a guest star appearance in Frasier.
Dang. So what I should be doing is I should go rewatch Cheers in its entirety, and then watch Frasier.
Probably.
Yes, that's what you need to do.
This has given me so much purpose. I have been struggling lately to find shows to watch at night. I don't know if your guys' evening routine is like mine, but like once it gets like maybe an hour or two to closer to bedtime, or when I'd like to actually try to fall asleep, I just sit and I watch like 2 hours of TV, or like an hour, maybe an hour and a half of TV.
Well, you definitely have some catching up to do.
I do have some catching up to do. I'd kind of like to piggyback off this question quick. And like growing up, like what shows did you watch? Like Kim has watched every episode of Frasier. I wonder if Kim has seen Cheers or if he knows this lore. Anyways, what shows were you guys watching growing up?
We watched a lot of Friends.
Yes. Go ahead, Robbie.
Friends. Are you talking just sitcoms?
Yeah, sitcoms, or I don't know, like network classics. Like were you like a Nickelodeon or a Disney kid when you were young?
So if we're going with that, like Nickelodeon was an absolutely massive part of my childhood, especially in the summers when we had no school. Hey Arnold, Rugrats, SpongeBob, Rocket Power. I could go on and on with those. Cartoon Network was another one. Disney here and there, not as much as Nickelodeon, but yeah, a lot of Nickelodeon, a lot of Cartoon Network, especially in the summers is what we watched.
Lizzie McGuire?
Yeah, I mean, I was never like. There's some people that are like huge fans of Lizzie McGuire. I'd watch it, but I probably can't really tell you much about the show other than it starred Hilary Duff. That's probably about it.
Like Kim from Denmark, seeing every episode of Frasier, I have seen every episode of Lizzie McGuire.
Oh, okay.
Wow, we're opening up not cans of worms, but we're opening up new layers to these people. You think you know people, and then you realize you really don't know. You really don't know the people you think you know. I mean, from these statements saying that he's never seen he's seen Cheers, but he's never seen Frasier. He didn't know that was connected. And now he's saying he's seen every episode. I mean, I love Lizzie McGuire. I grew up with a heavy heaping of Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, and Cartoon Network. And I have a sister who's 6 years older than me. So she would watch, she was the prime age for the late 90s, early 2000s stuff that you'd see on Nickelodeon, Disney Channel. And I just grew up with that because it was in my environment. And now I love all of the stuff that she grew up watching is like all of the stuff that I love watching too. And it's probably just because it was in my environment so much. And like as I got older, like by 2007, 2008, I was starting to get phased out of like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. But yeah, all of the stuff mid to late 90s cartoons and even sitcoms for that matter. Like I was raised on Everybody Loves Raymond, Seinfeld, Cheers, Frasier. These are all still shows that my parents watch to this day and continue to watch. And my dad's favorite TV show is probably Seinfeld ever. This is a favorite TV show of all time. And I think it's absolutely hilarious. So yeah, this has been an enlightening conversation, not only for the fact that we have opened Snail's mind up to something that he previously had no idea was connected, but you know, the fact that we're coming together as a trio here and we're just sharing thoughts about childhood and what we watched on TV.
I love it, man. You guys know what I'll be doing this Labor Day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As soon as we're done recording.
All right, we'll move on from that. Let's see here. I think we're on question 15.
Yes.
This is from Jace and Kim with similar questions. With how cap-strapped the Penguins currently are, if Dubas was to make a trade, it would obviously have to be money in, money out. Who are candidates that could potentially get traded at the deadline? Who are guys you would like General Manager Kyle Dubas to target?
Well, Robbie, do you remember before Snail, this was when Snail was a question asker, and when it was just the two of us, every week, Robbie, it felt like we were getting a question about who should the general, whether it was Ron Hextall or now Kyle Dubas, we were getting trade mailbag questions months before the trade deadline.
Yeah, it's way too early. Let's get like a month of the season in first. It's way too early to be thinking about what the Penguins may or may not need. They should obviously trade for Connor McDavid. Is my answer. My mind's still recovering from the last trade deadline. We got questions. We got questions, multiple questions every week starting in like right as the season started about the trade deadline for last season. So yeah, it was a lot.
What I will say to try and satisfy both Jace and Kim, I cannot tell you who I would like Kyle Dubas to target because I have no idea who's on the block. But for hypothetical sake, I can maybe wager a guess and see if there was a player or a couple of players that may be used as trade bait for the Penguins. I have no evidence to back this up, but given his age and current contract, maybe Brian Rust. Maybe Brian Rust is a potential trade candidate. Again, I have no evidence to back it up, and I can't tell you why he would be traded. But hey, maybe if the Penguins need to create salary cap space, I think maybe Brian Rust or Rickard Rakell would be the first two that I would look at and say, okay, we need to create some space. Who can we take off our books, but not make us an incredibly terrible team in the process of doing it? So hypothetically, if the Penguins are selling, well, let's hope they're not selling. If they are selling, though, the first two people off the top of my head, because of their cap hit and remaining contract, maybe Brian Rust and Rickard Rakell.
Maybe I asked this question to you guys at one point when I was in my larval stage as a question asker. So there's a guy that I think I've wanted this guy in Pittsburgh for a long time, and I'd be curious. I'm curious if you guys have any opinion on this player. But I've thought this guy would just be like the perfect fit under Sullivan's system in Pittsburgh. And what it all depends on what you'd be willing to give up. Like Rust, I love Brian Rust. Would I trade him at the deadline? If Rust bounced back, probably not, and has a good season next year. If he continues to kind of like pitter out and he's declining, maybe you look at this. But like, dude, Josh Anderson, he plays for the Habs right now. He used to play for Columbus. I've thought that dude is just like perfect for what, he's fast. He's super fast, speedy winger. He's a right shot. I think he on like a stacked team, on like a good team, like the Penguins. I wouldn't call the Penguins stacked. I'm just saying like on a good team or better team, he's like the perfect third line player. He's fast. He's got a scoring touch. He's like pretty clutch. I think a lot of the goals he scored in the playoffs, he's like a clutch player. He can, I know Garrett hates this, but he can fight. He can stick up for other players. He's not a dirty player though. I would say he can drop the mitts if he needs to, but he's not a guy out there taking stupid penalties. Just to kind of satisfy this guy, Jason Kim, it's like, dude, I think that I've been saying they should target Josh Anderson for a really long time. Do you guys have any opinion on that?
I like Josh Anderson. I'm just looking at some of his stats right now. He's a 2-time 20-plus goal scorer, and in a couple of other seasons, he ended with 19 goals scored. So in 457 career games played, split between the Columbus Blue Jackets and Canadiens, 457 games played, 122 goals scored, 203 points, career points, 387 penalty minutes. So on the surface, this is a guy that can provide you a decent chunk of offense if he's surrounded by the right cast. 29 years old, like Snail mentioned, right wing, right shot. I don't know what his cap hit is. I don't know. I don't know if he's locked up in Montreal long term, but this looks like a player that I would have no problem if Kyle Dubas went out and tried to acquire him.
I think he's making a little over 5, so not exactly third line money, but I don't know.
Alrighty, well, with that, we'll move on to question 16 here for Robbie. Question 16 comes from Logan Krenke. If Tristan Jarry struggles with injuries again this year, do you think Dubas has a backup plan in the back of his mind?
I hope so.
Yeah, me too.
The backup plan, at least from what we've seen this offseason, is apparently sign a bunch of guys and hope something sticks. You're going to probably enter the season with a tandem of Jarry, obviously, and Alex Nedeljkovic. I would assume it's going to be the backup, but you also have Taylor Gauthier and Magnus Elberg waiting in the wings as well as your third goalie. Joel Blomqvist is, I think that all 4 of those guys would probably have to get hurt before we see Blomqvist in the NHL this season. This is going to be a pure development season for Blomqvist in the AHL. But Jarry, I don't know what was said in meetings between contract negotiations, but whatever it was, Kyle Dubas seemed to like. And he trusts Tristan Jarry, and I guess we have to at least put some faith in the process here and hope that it was just a injury that kept him out for a big chunk of the season, and also when he was quote unquote healthy, is what prevented him from being the goaltender that we think he can be. So Kyle Dubas was putting a lot of faith in Tristan Jarry. So I guess the backup plan is, if it's not Jarry, we hope that one of these other guys can make it work. But honestly, I'm a little skeptical of that. But I'm going to put my faith in Tristan Jarry like Kyle Dubas is. But if it doesn't work out, it could be a big struggle back there. That's for sure. Question number 17 from Woody. Can the Penguins pay Jeff Carter but not play him? Is there something in his contract that says he must play a certain amount of minutes?
So with the way things shook out last season, and with how much Sullivan put Carter out there on the ice in pretty like important situations, you might think that there's got to be some language in the contract he has that he has to play a certain amount of minutes. But I've never actually heard of this in a like it being in a contract. I did a little bit of research on the internet and I didn't find anything, any concrete evidence that this is something that can be done. If you guys know any different, I'd invite you to chime in. But the first part of this question is, can the Penguins pay Jeff Carter and not play him? Absolutely. I think that depending if Jeff Carter shits the bed again this season, if he comes into camp and he's, clearly a year older, I think the Penguins will literally be paying Jeff Carter to not play. They will be paying to put him in the press box. But as far as there literally being a clause in his contract saying that, he's got to play a certain amount of minutes, I don't know. I can't imagine that that's a thing. I wouldn't put anything by Hextall. That dude clearly is a moron. If I don't think that that's the case, though. Do you guys know do you guys know anything about the way contracts can be written up? Is that a thing in the NHL?
There's no way.
I don't
There's
think
no
so.
way.
Not that I've ever heard of.
Yeah, because I've never heard of it either. Maybe the only thing I could see is like a performance bonus that is tied to a contract. Like a player has to play, I don't know, for 500 minutes over the course of a season. And if they get the 500 minutes, then they get their $500,000 bonus or something like that. But
right.
I've never seen language in a contract, I've never seen anyone report on contract negotiations saying that there is a clause that he has to play, and if he doesn't play, well, then there are legal NHLPA ramifications that come down if he doesn't play. But I've always associated that with like performance bonuses.
Yeah, that's kind of I could definitely see something with like the language written in there for like performance bonuses. But no, I think that I don't know why they played him so much last season. It would make you think that maybe his contract said you had to put him out there a certain amount. But I guess we'll find out this year if that's really the case. I think that, with the new regime, and unless Jeff Carter shows up ready to play and he's kind of almost gained half a step back, I would assume that they'll be paying him to, sit in the press box. But I guess we'll see. Let's go. I think is this the last question? Question 18?
It is the last question.
This comes from Woody. Do you believe we are getting very close to a strictly pay-per-view with all sports? Woody believes that we are, with regular season games and some playoff games. Commercials bring in too much money for something like the Super Bowl to go pay-per-view.
I love these hypothetical questions that talk about the future of sports broadcasting. And looking at this question, boy, doesn't it feel like, Woody, doesn't it feel like we are inching closer to the NFL charging a weekly rate on cable or a streaming service to say, you can watch this game, but you have to give us a $7.99 or a $9.99 streaming fee to watch this game. Granted, I think that's an extreme scenario, an extreme example to throw out there. But with the way people are cutting cable faster than ever before and relying on streaming services. Snail mentioned earlier, whether we were recording or not recording, just before we started, he has a bunch of streaming services and he doesn't pay for cable. That's becoming the reality. And I'm very curious to see what the future holds for networks like ESPN. And I think the property like the NBA or the NFL will remain a behemoth moneymaker, but it's clear more and more people are phasing out cable. How will they consume that content? It'll probably be direct-to-consumer streaming options instead of your traditional NBC, ABC, Fox, ESPN. The more and more I read about it, the more and more within the next 5 to 10 years, ESPN could be in grave danger because of how many people are cutting cable. We'll see if ESPN can adapt and sort of alter the way they bring sport to the consumer. But yeah, I think this is something to keep an eye on as this this sports media landscape really continues to evolve in real time. And I'm always fascinated by topics like this, talking about the hypotheticals and what ifs. But looking at the premium events like your World Series, what he mentions, the Super Bowl here, there, like what he says, there is so much money to be made on even like network TV for how much companies pay to have a 30-second ad aired on NBC or ABC or Fox for the Super Bowl. It's astronomical, millions and millions of dollars paid for commercial airtime. So I really don't think those premium events will ever go to a pay-per-view model like what the NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, what these sports leagues offer. I don't think their big championship games or series will go to that extreme. But I mean, with how crazy the sports media landscape is, I would have never thought, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that cable would be cut so quickly and streaming services would start to basically replace cable television. So it's more of a wait and see kind of thing to see what happens in the sports landscape, but it is definitely something that I will keep an eye on because I take great interest in seeing how this landscape changes on a daily, monthly, and yearly basis. Well, folks, it is, as we record, it is 3:13 Eastern Time on Labor Day, Monday, September 4th. We have gotten through another mailbag this week, and for Robbie's sake, not a moment too soon, because Robbie is abandoning his 2 adult sons, and he is going to enjoy a Labor Day picnic. So this will likely come out the day after Labor Day. If you're listening to this, I hope you had a wonderful holiday weekend for those of you in the United States, and for everyone who has decided to listen to another edition of the Penscast Mailbag here at the Skating Penguin Network. So for Snail, for Robbie Noggle, I have been Garrett Bahana. Thank you so much for listening to another edition of this mailbag, and we will talk to all of you again next week.